And away we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. That is right, it is time for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be taking a look at what is going on in the world today, reading some excerpts from the news and having a little bit of discussion in the live portion. And of course, the live portion, if anybody who's listening after the fact would care to join us, is on YouTube, and that is Coffee Talk and Prepper University, or at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University, respectfully, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, if anybody cares to find me there. And then there's fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta, Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. And naturally, I do try to read through as many of the comments as I possibly can to help people who are listening and not able to see keep up with the conversation. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the people that have chimed in thus far. Helter is here. Donna Beaver is here, who reminds everyone thumbs up, like, and share. And yes, please do if you do not mind. I do appreciate it. And she also says that she got her notification at 1:59. 1:59. That's cutting it close. And naturally, I do have this running gag going, whereas I am subscribed to myself, and I wait to see if I even get a notification and announce it when it comes up. Dragon is here, as well as Dilo and Moki joining us here today. And in the background, I have Dusty. Dusty the cat is laying in the chair, for those of you who can see, knocked clean out. Aren't you, Dusty? Dusty is well asleep. Oh, she stirred a little bit when I said her name there. And Boogers is here as we get ready to jump off into some of what is going on in the world, taking a look at some of the news. And of course, big in the news is all of the protests, but not just because they are protests, but because now they're getting stomped. And that is the pro-Palestinian protests that have been going on all across the country. And now suddenly they want to crack down on this and act like it's a big deal and do something about it. And I have to wonder, is it too little too late? Is it too little too late? People have already been poisoned. Already poisoned. AP. Yeah, you know me. As I wait for this to open up, I see Cyberjack Sr. has joined us here today. Glad you could make it. And I'll go ahead and try to crack that open. Hopefully, yeah, let me pause that. I think the video, this is an independent article. Sometimes if there's a video on there, it'll screw things up. Buggy at times. Independent article. It says police launch violent crackdowns on Gaza protests at colleges across the U.S. Quote, "We're terrified of another Kent state." And for those of you who are not familiar with Kent State, maybe you're too young or you're from another country. I know people who watch sometimes Australia, New Zealand, Greece. I've had people chime in from Greece, Canada. And speaking of which, there's Urban Angst, who is in Canada, saying hello. Glad you could make it. Kent State was that university that had the so-called Kent State massacre back in 1970, where National Guard troops that were trying to break up or at least contain anti-Vietnam protesters panicked and fired at the crowd. And they call it the Kent State Massacre, even though really only 4 people were killed, if I understand that correctly. I don't know what counts as a massacre, but apparently 4 people is enough. I'm not trying to undermine or, downplay the fact that 4 people were shot, but I think more than 4 people were shot, but 4 of them were killed. I don't know if that really counts as a massacre outside of just sensationalism in the press. Raccoon Eyes is here. And then Nature Nerd says millions of pro-Palestinian Muslims in the country ever since Obama. It's too little too late. And a couple of congresswomen are representing Somalia and not America, which should not be allowed. I agree. But getting into the article here, Says police in riot gear have violently broken up peaceful Gaza solidarity protests at college campuses across the country, arresting over 500 people in the process. It's more than that, and they're hardly peaceful. If you've been really watching, if you've watched the video footage, these people are not exactly peaceful, and they've been deliberately trying to instigate law enforcement in a lot of these confrontations. Images of armed police beating students, throwing them to the ground, and using tear gas to disperse the protests have flooded social media in the past few days as the protests continue to spread. One video from Emory University in Atlanta on Thursday showed police using a taser on a black man. Yeah, okay. They got. I love how the media just can't let that go. If they tasered a white guy, they wouldn't have said he was white. Seriously, just they can't resist that angle whenever the possibility comes up. Back to the article. Who was being restrained by 3 officers on the ground. Witnesses also reported police firing some kind of non-lethal projectile. Local outlet Maine reported that 18 people had been arrested in the Atlanta University. A spokesperson for the university said the initial crowd of protesters who gathered on the campus were not recognized as members of our community and were disrupting the university and our students as our students finish classes and prepare for finals. Basically, what's being suggested there is that a lot of the protesters are not even from the university, which is all the more reason for the university to want them to be removed. Some members of the Emory College later joined the initial group, said the spokesperson Laura Diamond, adding that multiple police warnings for the crowd to disperse were ignored, which is when the police start using riot control to press people out. The Atlanta Police Department said in a statement that its officers were met with violence when they were securing the campus, which is what I heard. And I have an additional story emphasizing on what happened at Emory that I'm going to open up here in a minute. Allen, a senior at the University of Southern California, said that a peaceful protest on the university campus on Wednesday had escalated suddenly when armed police arrived to disperse student protesters with rubber bullets and riot gear. The 22-year-old said tensions had risen suddenly after members of the USC Department of Public Safety had attempted to arrest an individual and put him in the car. The students blockaded the car and told them that they can arrest him. They're not leaving until he's outside the vehicle. I guess he means can't arrest him. People built a human chain around the car, and they said they were not leaving until you get him out of the car. It got very tense. Police ended up arresting 93 people. Yeah, because now you're obstructing justice, or so-called justice at that point. If someone's being arrested and you interfere with it, you're going to get hit with an obstruction of justice charge. And they'll end up arresting a ton of people in that type of a situation. So yeah, if you're going to interfere and you're going to be someplace you're not supposed to be, as was pointed out, a lot of the people that were on the campus weren't even from the campus. The law enforcement is going to sit out there for an hour telling you leave, 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 and you're going to ignore it. And then you're going to wrestle with people and try to form a blockade when they start moving you around. They're going to keep pushing it a step up. That's what happened. Urban says CNN would say they are mostly peaceful. Yeah. And Helter says, I don't hear anything from Biden or Harris. Where are they? You're not going to hear much. You're not going to hear much, and there's a reason for that, and we're going to get into it. But I'm going to jump to the Guardian, because I want to emphasize on specifically what happened at Emory as we continue to talk about this. So I'll go ahead and I'll share that. Branch of the White House is partially responsible for what's going on, as well as others, and we're going to dig into that rabbit hole in a minute too. So this is Atlanta. Here we are. It says police allegedly used rubber bullets and tear gas at university protest in Georgia. That happened. Police, and also the protests at the universities in Georgia not only had people that were not from the universities, but also had Cop City protesters there. And they have a history of being violent. So here we go. Police have carried out multiple violent arrests at Emory University in Decatur, Georgia, in what appears to be the first campus crackdown in recent days to involve rubber bullets and tear gas after students set up an encampment in solidarity with Palestine and against Cop City. There it is. And that's the part that's not being mentioned in the media, which is why I wanted to pull up a separate article on it. On Thursday, Emory students set up multiple tents on the campus's lawns in protest against the university's ties to Israel. That would be trespassing, as well as Atlanta's Cop City, a police and fire department training center that is being constructed on a 171-acre plot in a forest southeast of Atlanta. Again, first of all, this is one of the few times I see them mention that it's also a fire department training center. Usually they just say it's for the police. Secondly, it's not a forest. The name of the park is Forest. It's not a forest. It's a park owned by the state that already has police, law enforcement buildings, including 2 correctional facilities on it. That's why they want to build on that plot. That 170-acre plot already has law enforcement buildings. It's a way to just keep the costs down. In a statement released on Mondoweiss, student organizers wrote, "We are students across multiple Atlanta universities and community members organizing against Cop City and the genocide of Palestinians at the hands of U.S. imperialism. We are demanding total institutional divestment from Israeli apartheid in Cop City at Atlanta colleges and universities," because, you know, Cop City is totally an Israeli camp, I guess. I don't know what the hell they're thinking. How can you mix these together? Militarization. So the university responsible for Cop City and the war in Gaza, apparently, and said the protesters' fight against Cop City is interconnected with global movements against oppressive state practices, most notably the Palestinian struggle for liberation. Yeah, these people really have no clue what's going on in the world. Nothing. And they're being very easily manipulated as a result, which again, I'm going to get into here because I have another article linked up that's going to dig into this. Signs at the encampment read, "Gaza Solidarity Encampment and Divest from Death." Videos posted online showed students peacefully gathering around the encampment as a student organizer addressed the crowd. I love how the media keeps wanting to pretend these people are peaceful. Get out to one of these universities and watch them. They're hardly peaceful. They're very aggressive, very verbal and nasty, and very pushy. Very pushy. And Fluke Man is here. Glad you could make it. The Nature Nerd wants to point out Biden is spending a lot of money to build solar and wind factories in Georgia. Yeah, and they're failing too. Donna says they saw a video this morning where a girl said she came from a different school but didn't know why she was protesting. How stupid. And I've seen interviews with some of these people. They have no idea what the hell is going on in the Middle East. When you start questioning them or you point things out to them, they're clueless. They're clueless. Urban says, I think the schools are not afraid to lose Jewish funders because Qatari money funds at all anyway, or so I hear. Yeah, we've talked about that a lot, Urban. Something that Trump was investigating when he was in office is that a lot of funding, a lot of covered up funding, because the universities were not disclosing where the money was coming from. Billions of dollars, up to $5 billion at the time he was in office, and it's about $8 billion now since Biden took over, was coming from Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, China. They're coming from places that should not be making donations to universities in the United States, colleges and universities. And he wanted that investigated, and Biden shut that off when he got in office. He stopped the investigation. And I think now it's up to about $8 billion in funding that's gone into these schools. Dragon says all these campuses love to blame outsiders instead of their students. And Nature Nerd says, and $300 million to build a railroad in Zimbabwe to compete with China in Africa for minerals to make batteries and electronics. Yeah, exactly. And Helter says some parents watch these videos and assume that their college kid wouldn't be dumb enough to get involved with the violence. They have no idea that their kid is squandering their money. Yeah, it's like Girls Gone Wild. You know, it's like, oh, my girl's a good girl. She'll never get in trouble. And you see her in a Girls Gone Wild commercial back in the day. Oh my God. But this is what it's been pushed to. These people are not peaceful. They're not peaceful demonstrations at all. They're not peaceful demonstrations at all. And I've got a video clip here that'll demonstrate that. If I can play the video clip without any difficulty or interference, hopefully. And I just want to make sure that this is going to work properly without an ad. And it's a Fox News video. So I'm going to play that here in a moment. Urban says they saw the dumb girl and her masked friend who sounded even dumber. She must be glad she wore a mask. Yeah, I bet. But this is what's going on in this particular video. New York, and they violent manner and being obstructed with protesters who are blocking them from being able to get her out of the they've got her support. And this is where your obstruction of justice comes in. Every one of those people technically arrested now. Look at them wearing the Palestinian Hamas. And they're trying to conduct an arrest. People are screaming, "Free Palestine," and "Let her go," and you're violating her rights, you're violating the law. And look at this, it's a circus. But that's agitation. You know, you can only push somebody so far, and they're gonna retaliate. What they're hoping for is that one of these cops is going to snap off and hit them, and they're going to claim brutality. And now they're going to act tough that the door's locked. Watch. See that?
That's illegal. You can't do that. That's illegal. You're
now they're picking up the bird and screaming and puffing their chests out like they're going to do something. Now that the door is shut and the police are on the other side. And I hate people who feign bravery like that. People who are tough from down the block. You know what I mean? We've all seen this. We've all seen this. Those types of people that they want to act tough from a distance. And it's a unique situation because I know Biden and Harris, where's their commentary has come up earlier. And Biden and Harris are like, we need to stop the protests. Oh, but Hamas needs to stop and Israel needs to stop and this and that needs to stop. And they're not actually interfering with anything. They're sending money to Israel, but they've also sent money to Iran. Up to $100 billion, as I understand. Up to $100 billion has been bled from American taxpayers into Iran. And look what Iran has done with it. They also put a blockade against the Abrahamic Accords, which is something that Trump set up to try to prevent what happened on October 7th, which may or may not have prevented it, but still it didn't hurt to have it. Because, you know, the people in the Middle East don't give a shit about treaties. I mean, we've seen that time and again. It means nothing to them. They will lie to a proposed enemy. They'll sign any contract. They'll make any promise. It doesn't make a difference. But regardless, you have an administration, the executive branch of our government, the Biden administration, as it were, funding both sides of this. They've been pouring money into Iran, who has been funding various groups, including Hamas, to stir up mess all across the Middle East, and sending money to Israel too. playing both ends against the middle is what the Biden administration has been doing. And it's got serious repercussions in the United States because look at this. Look at this. And who's funding that? Who's paying for that, you wonder? Well, we're about to take a look at who's funding that because it's not organic. These protests didn't just form up out of nowhere. And the fact that there's people on these campuses that have nothing to do with the campus isn't an accident. It's no accident. It's been done on purpose. And I'm about to open up the next article here. Let me catch a couple of comments real quick. I see Spectre has joined us. He says, am I too late? No, it's never too late, Spectre. Raccoon says, put them all on a plane to Palestine and watch how fast they change their tune. They don't want to go there. And Nature Nerd says, free Palestine from Hamas. Yeah, I know. They don't like Hamas either out there. And again, I'll remind people, and I forget the name of the other group, but Hamas was in its own war in Gaza before this with another extremist group that has been exterminated to the last person. That's genocide. There are no more of this other group. I cannot remember the name of that group, but they were fighting for a few years. Now they're all gone, and Hamas was what was left. You didn't see that in the media. You didn't see that in the news. Nobody gave a damn when they were killing each other. Urban says it's almost like the authorities are giving those empty students just enough rope. Yeah. And Nature Nerd says, free Palestine for, oh, I read that already. Sorry. Dragon says another reason why young people should not go to college. College is nothing but political and social brainwashing. Once they get into the workforce, they'll realize how worthless their skills are. And Nature Nerd says these idiots need to be shipped back to the Middle East. And if there's any of those protesters that are not U.S. citizens, they should be deported. Legend says present, and it just seems people just want to act violent for no reason. I had to explain to a coworker last night why our company has a light facing the building at night to deter thieves. And some people just want to tear up. Some people just want to tear up. That was something that was mentioned in the second Batman with Christian Bale, with the Joker, the Heath Ledger Joker. And Alfred was telling him to stop trying to figure out what the Joker is all about. And he told a story about a terrorist in India when he was still in the military, and explained that sometimes there are some people that just want to watch the world burn. Some people just want to destroy things. Some people just want to be disruptive and to cause problems and to steal and to break things for no reason other than to satisfy themselves. And it's never enough. Fluke Man says violating her rights, but it's okay to violate people's rights for being white, male, straight, wealthy, Jewish, and etc. No kidding. And Eric Peter says acting tough from a distance should have been the original name of the internet. No kidding. Like keyboard warriors, as they call them. People who hide behind the anonymity of the internet with a fake name and a fake profile and say cruel things that they wouldn't have the balls to say to anyone else. And Donna says fund both sides and keep it going. That's exactly what's happening. Try to catch up a couple more here real quick. Urban says best current meme, the Poison Ivy League. And Nature Nerd says, how can you fund Israel $24 billion, but also fund Palestine at the same time? Through Iran. But yeah, I mean, and that was $100 billion apparently that has been funneled to Iran in the last few years, and not during the Trump administration. And Southern Survival is here. Glad you could make it. He says he's an Army vet. Cannon Crew. And he's sick of the border, and we're doing nothing about it. Our country is hurting, and it sucks. Yes, and as has been mentioned many times in the podcast, of course, that was signed into executive order on the first day under the Biden administration when he had that big stack, and he made the joke, I don't even know what I'm signing. Look it up. It's on camera. It's on film. I don't even know what this is. Signing bills, trying to be funny. It's not funny. And one of those executive orders barred the people at the border, barred the Border Patrol from detaining and deporting individuals repatriating them, as they like to say politically. And that's when we went from 800 encounters a day to 8,000 and climbing. And it's going to be a task. Hopefully he fails and whoever gets in there next starts deporting them. It can be done. It can be done. They can find these people if they want to. They can. And it'd be cheaper to send them back where they came from than to take care of them. Absolutely. And there's Monkey. Monkey made it today. Glad you could pop in. And who, I had alluded to it earlier, where do you think the money's coming from? Again, this doesn't happen organically. You don't just suddenly decide, hey guys, at the soda shop, what do you say we go pop down to the campus and set up tents and protest for Palestine? Yeah, okay, let's do that. No, money came from somewhere and it was organized by someone. Guess who? Is paying the activists. There he is. Why is this guy still alive? What is he, bathe in blood? Is he Ra's al Ghul? Holy crap. And he looks evil too. Oh my God. This is like the portrait of, or the picture of Dorian Gray here, but the picture, not the man. He wears his evil on his face. It's like the evil emperor from Star Wars. Emperor Palpatine, right? So there we go. Multiple leaders of the anti-Israel protests at college campuses across the nation have been revealed to have been paid by fellows of George Soros connected groups. 3 of the major figures in the pro-Palestine encampment in the U.S. universities are fellows at the Soros-funded U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights, as reported by the New York Post. Big surprise. Why is this guy allowed to do this? How many pockets has he got his hands in? How many pies has he got his dirty fingers in that this isn't being obstructed? This is undermining the security of the United States. That's a form of treason. Who's surprised to see this face? Nature Nerd says New York City added $6 billion to the debt giving illegals apartments and accommodations. Yeah, we were talking about that the other day. And Urban Angst says they always believed Soros and Kissinger would go together. Oh, well, I guess not. Well, you know, Death has that claw machine going, and he managed to pick Kissinger out this time. Soros is next. But make no mistake, somebody will pick up that torch. It's not as simple as cutting off the head of the snake, unfortunately. Raccoon says Soros belongs under a jail. And Nature Nerd says, isn't Soros Jewish? Well, I mean, you can be Jewish by nationality and not by faith, you know, and not have a biblically sound heart, as it were. So back to the article. USCPR community-based fellows are paid up to $7,800, while campus-based fellows are given between $2,880 and $3,660 for spending 8 hours a week organizing campaigns led by Palestinian organizations. Wow. Well, man, you're going to pay me $3,000 for 8 hours of work. Somebody do that. Pay me for that. I won't help them, though. The organization instructs its fellows to, quote, rise up and spark revolution. These are quotes, while specifically telling them to reject reform. It has received at least $300,000 from Soros Open Society Foundations since 2017. One of them, former president of the University of Texas Students for Justice in Palestine, Nida Lafi, was seen giving a speech on the campus encampment on Wednesday. Lafi, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is currently studying law at Southern Methodist University in Dallas after graduating from UT last year. The former intern for late Democratic Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson was detained in January for blocking the route of President Joe Biden's motorcade in Dallas for the funeral of her former boss, Representative Johnson. So troublemakers getting paid big money is what it is. Meanwhile, at Yale, USCPR fellow Craig Bickerhead Morton, and this is Bickerhead Morton right here in this picture, if you can see it, was arrested after occupying the school Beinecke Plaza on Monday. He was an intern Democratic Maryland representative. For Democratic Maryland Representative John Sabanes at Berkeley, co-president of the Berkeley Law Students for Justice in Palestine, Malak Afina, is a known face at pro-Palestine protests and has been speaking at the campus protests this week. Afina previously made headlines this month when she was one of the students who hijacked a dinner with the law school's dean and made it into an anti-Israel demonstration. She accused the dean's wife of assaulting her after she was asked to leave the dean's home. So she busted in on their party, basically. She was a gate crasher. I find it interesting that these leaders at these universities that are getting Soros money also work for senators and representatives as liaisons. I think that's very interesting. Raccoon says Soros turned on his own people during World War II. He's a total dirtbag. And Helter says the U.S. will sanction entire countries, but not one single person, namely Soros. Yeah, and this is undermining. This is a threat to your so-called democracy. Paying these people who probably don't even believe in the cause to stir up mess deliberately. Going back to the previous page to read what the article of their payment says. As it points out, paid up to $7,800 for their labor, with campus-based people making over $3,600 for 8 hours a week. To organize campaigns, quotes again, organize campaigns led by Palestinian organizations. It's instructed to rise up and spark revolution while specifically telling them to reject reform. It has received $300,000 from Soros, and that's all right there. And again, this is a Daily Mail article in case you want to find it. And these people work for representatives and senators in our country, work for universities, and are being paid by Soros basically to poison the minds of your children and turn them against their own country in their own ignorance, because they have no idea what they're protesting or why. Back to the article. The controversial protests in the U.S. campuses are organized by branches of the far leftist group Students for Justice in Palestine, or SJP, which is funded by nonprofits connected to Soros. Soros, who is Jewish, was born Grigori Schwartz in Hungary and survived the country's Nazi occupation. Tensions continue to escalate at Columbia, where hundreds of pro-Palestinian protesters are demanding that the institution divest from companies with ties to Israel. So far, more than 100 demonstrators have been arrested at the Gaza Solidarity Encampment, which is comprised of a coalition of 116 groups under the umbrella organization at Columbia University's Apartheid Divest. And here they show you a little chart. It's kind of hard. I don't know if it'll expand. No, it won't. There's a chart here linking some of these bigger named individuals, including the guy we just saw. What was his name again? Craig Bickerhead Morton, right here. And their connections to these various universities that they're moving around to. Unbelievable. And I see repent and follow. Jesus Christ is here. Glad you could make it today. Urban says, oh, but that's all a conspiracy theory, except that they are done theorizing and have been putting it in practice openly. Yeah, I mean, it is an open practice. You can't deny this anymore. You can't pretend it's a conspiracy theory when it's right in front of you. Even if the media tells you it's a conspiracy theory, you can see and hear for yourself. Those with eyes to see and ears to hear, as the Bible would say. And Nature Nerd says Soros's goal is to undermine the West for more than half a century. Indeed. And Monkey says, man, YouTube is taking down their comment. There's taking down your comments again, Monkey? Oh my God. And yeah, some of you know, or you're quite aware that the AI in this system, in ScrewTube, it polices everything. It leaves no stone unturned in screwing people up. So let me, one more paragraph here. Several of the groups in the coalition have received backing from left-wing donors, including one group currently under investigation for allegedly fundraising for terrorist organizations. One of the key players in the coalition is Students for Justice in Palestine, which the Gazette reports came out in support of October 7th attack, killing more than 1,200 Israelis. SJP receives funding from American Muslims for Palestine, according to the Anti-Defamation League, which describes AMP as holding an extreme anti-Israel view. Why are organizations like this even allowed to exist? Meanwhile, motorcycle clubs have to register themselves as MCs. That's why you see MC on the patch overs on people from motorcycle clubs. They have to register themselves as a motorcycle club so that they won't be considered a gang by the FBI and spied on, which they're probably spied on anyways. But organizations like this can fester on our soil, and they are enemies of our country. Openly. We're here to screw you up. Last year, Virginia's Attorney General Jason Miyares announced his office was investigating AMP over allegations they may have been fundraising for terrorist organizations. SJP is also an offshoot of the Westchester People's Action Coalition, which supports boycott, divestment, and sanctions, the Green New Deal, and other left-wing initiatives. Westpac is named as a fiscal sponsor of SJP, according to NGO Monitor, and has assets over $1 million. Plenty of money to throw around to a bunch of stupid, spotty college kids who don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't know what the hell they're doing. The Jericho says they wanted to point out they rarely get to see your streams live, but since they're here now, they noticed when you switch articles with live stream to the blank orange screen, you break up pretty badly. And because you're talking and you switch, or at least I can't hear what you're saying as you're switching over. Just thought I'd point it out there. Yeah, and it's a restream issue as far as I can tell. And I've been trying to work the bugs out of it there, Jericho. And that's why I did an impromptu live stream like a week ago to try to fine tune it. It's a little better now, and I'll probably be doing another one. I don't think I'll have time over the weekend, but sometime maybe next week, and I'll try to dial it in a little better. Because, yeah, when you open up the article, there's an odd transition sometimes, and it goes to the blank orange screen. I don't mind if the screen flickers for a couple of seconds, as long as the audio is not interrupted, because I think that's a little more important. But it's also important for me, anyways, to pull the article open and share the screen so that people can see it, so that they can find the article if they want, or at least they can see I'm not making everything up when I'm reading it. But yeah, I'm working on it. I'm not like Fox News Digital here. I don't have all kinds of fancy, expensive equipment. The Restream was expensive enough, and it's still buggy. I had to pay for that out of pocket. No one paying me to talk, unfortunately. I wish they would. I'd still say whatever the hell I want, which is probably why no one's paying me to talk. Urban Angst says, here's a conspiracy theory. There is no AI on social platforms. It's all human NPCs plugging in remotely from work. Oh, no. And who remembers Deep Blue, the computer that supposedly beat Kasparov in 1997? I remember that, the chess champion. And Unknown Nose is here. Glad you could make it today. And Jericho specifies they notice it's only when you switch over to it's really weird, but otherwise the stream works fine. Well, I try. I do the best I can. I do the best I can with what I have to work with. So there you go. As we get ready to, speaking of conspiracy theories, here's a big one. And I wanted to open up an article. On the subject. Huge conspiracy theory that people argue about all the time. And Jericho says they heard it was what, $500 for Restream. Yeah, that's how much all of them cost. So no matter who you go to, whether it's or whoever the hell you got, they all charge about the same, and it's roughly like a hair short of $500 for the year. So you get 12 months, but 12 months of buggy I can do without. And Restream, they look and sound more clear than StreamYard, but StreamYard I don't believe had transitional problems like this. But we're going to jump to the BBC. Here. Here's a huge conspiracy theory as we see what happens. Come on, Restream, you can make it. There it is. Tennessee passes a chemtrail bill banning airborne chemicals. I thought there was no such thing. And there's your picture of chemtrails for those of you who can see. And I'm going to explain where this comes from, okay? Because that's a modern thing, but there's some sense that can be made out of it. But here we go. Tennessee lawmakers have passed a bill banning the release of airborne chemicals that critics say is inspired by, quote, chemtrails conspiracy theories. The bill forbids intentional, release or dispersion of chemicals into the air. It doesn't explicitly mention the word chemtrails, which conspiracy theorists believe are poisons spread by planes. Instead, it broadly prohibits, quote, affecting temperature, weather, or the intensity of the sunlight. The Republican-sponsored bill passed along party line on Monday. If signed by Tennessee's Governor, Republican Billy, there you go. That's country enough for you. It will go into effect on July 1st. The bill's backers were spurred on by government reports released last year on solar geoengineering, which is the idea of cooling the planet by reflecting sunlight back into space. The White House, though, has said that there are no plans to establish a comprehensive research program focused on solar radiation modification. That's because they did it during Vietnam War. They don't have to perfect it anymore. Several witnesses who testified before the Tennessee legislators cited debunked conspiracy theories on speculated about secret government geoengineering programs, according to Scott Banbury, conservation director of the state's branch of the Sierra Club, an environmental organization. Their claims were troubling, he says. As a serious environmental organization, if what was in the bill was actually going on, we would be calling for a stop to it, he said. It's not happening. So the legislation focuses on geoengineering, a very broad category, which includes mostly theoretical large-scale action to mitigate climate change. Geoengineering is a controversial even among legitimate climate scientists because of uncertainty around its usefulness and the possibility of unintended outcomes. And again, they've already admitted to experimenting with that kind of stuff during the Vietnam War. So don't tell me now. Don't tell me now it's all speculation. Nature Nerd says AI is Stalin and Mao's dream for speech policing. Yeah. And Urban Angst says Dubai is finding out what happens when you mess with the weather. No kidding. But why all the speculation? Why all the conspiracy theories about chemtrails? And they've already explained a million times, oh, it's just vapor trails coming off the plane. Do you know why a lot of people where this originally comes from. Who here is older? Who here might be in my age category? Okay. Whether you believe in chemtrails or not, chime in here. When you were a kid, were there lines behind the planes when they flew overhead? Think about it. Think about it. When you were a kid, growing up in the 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, whenever, did you see lines behind the planes? So, I look in the sky now and it looks like a tic-tac-toe board. There's streaks all over the place from planes passing by. I don't recall seeing that when I was a kid. And thinking about this, I looked up images because you can find stock photos of like skyline pictures, even of planes flying by in like Google Images, Bing Images, whatever. And there's no lines. So people, when that started happening in like the 90s, you started noticing it. And now all the planes do it. And so you sit there and you say, why the hell are there trails now? And they speculate, well, somebody might be doing something shady. Sven says they're old enough. And Fluke Man says, should we be concerned with microplastic getting everywhere? A report said a lab done tests and found at least one in a mouse's brain. I would be. And, a lot of that comes from swallowing capsules. Like if you, those dissolvable capsules that a lot of pills come in, that's how a lot of plastic will end up in your system. Cruising says it's just you and the dinosaurs. Yeah, I know. I used to ride a dinosaur. Those were the days. And Sven said, yeah, but for a really short time. He's talking about lines behind the planes. And Stars Wake said there were no lines. Raccoon says they don't remember. And Sven says that they would disappear quickly. And Cyberjack Senior is here. Glad you could make it. And Urban says it could be different fuel. Yeah, I don't know if jet fuel has changed in the last few decades or not. And Delo says, yes, sir. Unknown No says lines, yes. Lines persisting for up to an hour, no. Cyberjack Senior says vapor trails don't hang in place for hours. Donna Beaver says that they're 66, and yes, but they would evaporate. Yeah. Sven says Brennahan said chemtrails were a real thing. As I catch up a few more of these comments, I opened a can of worms with that article, didn't I? Raccoon says they took a picture of a perfect X in the sky, like X marks the spot. Kind of weird. Those two planes didn't collide. And then they made a remark about Dusty being all twisted up back there. She's all right. They do weird stuff. Cats have no bones, apparently. No, they one might have been in a lot higher of a position. They could have been like a half a mile higher and you wouldn't know looking straight up. Or one could have passed long before another one came by. And Donna Beaver says they grew up on an Air Force base. Well, there you go. And Jericho said they used to ride a dinosaur. I used to ride a dinosaur. You cannot be that old. I remember your UPS videos. Yeah. And Helter says banning the intentional release of chemicals will not stop the trails. Yeah, I know. They can't control planes that are flying overhead like that. What are they going to do? Declare a sovereign airspace? The federal government technically owns the airspace. I did a video about that. On Prepper University. People got upset with me. And they always get upset. There's always somebody who's going to get mad at you no matter what you say. Because I was talking about the concept of shooting drones down. Because people are like, oh, if a drone flies over my property, I'm going to get my shotgun. No, you won't. If that drone turns out to belong to the city, state, county, federal government, you're going to jail. Because the airspace belongs to the federal government and is overseen by the FAA. You do not own the land above your property. And even the trees, if you have trees on your property, you own technically only the land about 3 to 4 feet, or the airspace 3 to 4 feet around the trees. Seriously, look it up. You do not own any airspace over your property. It's technically owned and regulated by the government. So yeah, unless Tennessee declares itself independent airspace, which I don't see them doing that. Sven says the fuel is cleaner now, so there should be no issue unless other additives are in it, like barium. And Cruising says they think there was a change in engine design with the turbines and large jet engines to create extra thrust. Not sure if it impacted the exhaust trails, though. Well, even if they have extra thrust, they're not flying at capacity anyways. They have a limit on airspace on their airspeed. They so even though a 747 may be capable of going like 600 miles an hour, it's going to cruise at 420 or 415 or something like that. They don't fly at capacity. They rarely ever get that. They rarely ever get that far. They rarely ever get that far. I just thought that's fascinating that they would want to do that, and also gives the opportunity to just break away and explain where that whole theory even originated from. People speculating on how come we see all these streaks all the time now, basically. The Jericho said when it comes to plane traffic, they actually fly across each other now at like 10,000 feet or less now. Basically. Unknown Nose remembers Dino Riders. I remember that. I remember Dino Riders. As we get ready to bounce in here, we're going to look at a Business Insider article complaining about plastic. Complaining about plastic because who's under pressure to fix under pressure way, and reducing keeps making more of it. Oh no. There we are. World leaders are gathering in Ottawa, Ontario this week to hash out a global treaty to end plastic pollution. Good freaking luck. It's a pivotal point in the talks, with countries aiming to strike a deal by the end of the year. The U.S. has positioned itself as a broker between other big oil, gas, and petrochemical exporters, including Russia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia. Yeah, 3 countries that are not going to listen to America. And countries that want steep cuts in plastic production. But critics say the U.S. isn't being ambitious enough. We'd like to see clear recognition from the U.S. that the treaty has to confront the production of plastic polymers and resins if it is to be successful. Carol Muffett, the president and CEO of the Center for International Environmental Law, told Business Insider, "We cannot recycle our way out of the plastics crisis." Yeah, that's because most countries don't bother to recycle any of the shit. We're the only ones even trying, and we can't even do 15% of it. The recycling operations can't handle the load, and it ends up going to the dump anyways. We all know this. All that paper and plastic and separating shit into bins that they force you to do in a lot of places. Like I know Boston was doing it when I left. They had all these separate bins with different colors on them that you had to put. Aluminum goes in this one, and other metals go in this one, and computer garbage goes in this one, and plastic goes in this one, and it all goes to the dump anyway. BFI throws all that shit in the same bin. Muffet is among a handful of scientists and business and community advocacy groups who told the Business Insider they want to see a stronger position from the U.S. The country has a lot of sway in the world's largest exporter of oil and gas, the main ingredient in plastics. The U.S. has also been at the forefront of a massive build-out of new plastics and petrochemical plants over the past decade. The Environmental Integrity Project, a Washington, D.C. based nonprofit, I bet you they get paid well, identified 50 plastic plants built after 2012 and found that at least 20 more would be built or expanded over the next 5 years. Why do we have to lead everything? Why do we have to lead everything? And we're not the ones that are ultimately responsible for the bulk of pollution. Most of the Western world, the United States, Canada, the UK, and other Western European nations have drastically reduced their plastic output over the last couple of decades. Meanwhile, and some of you might remember the post I put up on Coffee Talk and on X, if you saw it, with Greta Thunberg's face and the plastics chart. Like places like India and China have gone up over 1,000%. And they waste the stuff. They don't recycle anything. They throw that crap in the street. But it always falls on America. We're always the ones. Jericho says they were a plane mechanic and had training in avionics, and that was why they drilled in our heads how air traffic has changed over the years, and they shrank the distances at which the planes can fly close to each other. And then Nature Nerd reminds us neighboring states will still make chemtrails, which will move towards Tennessee anyways. And JP Watchman says weather mods going on big time. Yeah, I bet they are. And Sven says the engine now burns cleaner, also with less fuel. And Fluke Man says they thought of a new tax. Anyone breathes above 3 feet has to pay oxygen tax. Yeah, maybe they can tax you every time you jump up in the air since you're not on your own property anymore. That's indeed. Monkey says we got to reduce plastic pollution and proceeds to produce more plastic. Of course. And they warned us about plastic way back in the day. Some of you may not be old enough to remember, but I'll point it out here. Once upon a time, everything came in glass jars. And I remember being in the supermarket and all the bottles, like if you wanted to get a 2-liter bottle of soda, it came in a big glass jar with a foam wrapper on the outside of it. You remember this? Everything was in glass. And then they started producing everything in plastic. And plastic was cheaper and it was safer because if you dropped it, it was less likely to break. And so everybody was like, okay, good deal. And the glass industry at the time was putting out advertisements on television telling people, hey, man, okay, it's cheaper and it's less likely to break, but glass is more sanitary and it's easier to recycle. What's wrong? What's wrong? Come here, darling. It's Granny Smith, everybody. Let me close that out. Miss Granny Smith, everybody, just came running up to me like something was wrong. So I guess she needs some attention. There's Granny Smith, one of our rescues. Hello, dear. And she always digs her claws into my beard. She likes my beard for some reason. But the glass industry was warning, the chemicals that are used to produce the plastic, it leaves residue inside these bottles. You don't know if they're clean. The glass is easier to recycle, blah, 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 support the glass industry, and nobody did because it was safer. In regards to breakage, it's lighter, so it costs less to transport, and it's cheaper to manufacture. Isn't that right, Miss Granny Smith? So everybody said, screw you, glass industry, and they put everything in plastic, and now we're having all kinds of problems because it's not safe. I mean, hell, the plastic is turning up in our bodies. You want to eat plastic? You want a nice piece of chicken, don't you? Don't you, darling? Anyways, we are getting up to the top of the hour. So sorry I couldn't catch up everybody else's comments. I'm way behind here. Isn't that right, dear? Isn't that right, dear? I'm way behind schedule. But again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find me at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University on YouTube. You want to get down now? I'll put you down. So please do find me there and subscribe if you have not already, as well as X, formerly known as Twitter, and that's at Coffee Talk Chat, and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. And Moki wants to see cat feet. You just did. I think you saw her feet, didn't you? But with that, I will go ahead and sign off. Thank you to everybody who was able to join us here today in the live portion. Hope you got something out of the conversation, and we will catch you up again.